Pa da ne bismo opet rekli da nismo znali, evo na našu molbu Državno odvjetništvo prvi je put zbrojilo najteža kaznena djela iz svoje evidencije i napokon evo tih podataka. U tijeku i neposredno nakon akcije Oluja počinjena su 24 ratna zločina u kojima je ubijeno 156 osoba. Za većinu njih još traju kriminalističke istraživanja. Za te ratne zločine procesuirano je tek 10 osoba koje su tada bile pripadnici Hrvatske vojske i policije. Njima se stavlja na teret 11 ubijenih. Istodobno, tijekom i nakon akcije Oluja izvršeno je kazneno djelo ubojstva 47 osoba. Zbog ubojstva 21 osobe procesuirana su 33 počinitelja, dok počinitelji ostalih 26 ubojstava nisu otkriveni. Ukupno je dakle na temelju prijava policije i dosadašnjih istraga DORH evidentirao 214 ubijenih osoba koje su tijekom i nakon akcije Oluja stradale bilo kao žrtve ratnog zločina, bilo kao žrtve takozvanog običnog ubojstva. Prema podacima Hrvatskog helsinškog odbora ukupan broj žrtava iz Oluje je 677. Razlika u podacima, kaže nam u DORH-u, je u tome što HHO u svojoj evidenciji nije razdvojio žrtve rata od žrtava ratnih zločina i ubojstava. U DORH-u su stoga zatražili od svih mjerodavnih da utvrde pod kojim su okolnostima stradale osobe koje se navode u pojedinim popisima, kako bi se točno utvrdio mogući broj žrtava koje su posljedica ratnih zločina. A za uzburkane strasti evo jedan malo smireniji pogled iz inozemstva. P.Galbraith, u doba Oluje američki veleposlanik u Zagrebu, sada je senator u državi Vermont. S njim je ondje razgovarala naša američka dopisnica Branka Slavica o Oluji, Tuđmanu, haškoj presudi.
Ambassador Galbraith, the majority of Croatian public finds the verdicts against General Gotovina and General Markac deeply unfair. What is your opinion? Were you surprised at all when the court sentenced them to 24 and 18 years?
I was a little surprised at the verdict in the case of General Gotovina because the parts of the case that I had testified about, I had felt that there had not been a systematic shelling of Knin, and of course then he was in Bosnia when in my view the crimes were taking place in Croatia. But the court obviously heard much more evidence than I did. I was a participant in the trial. I didn't follow it. And so they made their judgment based on the evidence.
For the average Croat, Operation Storm was legitimate, and the generals are heroes. Although you can find the people in Croatia who would oppose that opinion, it's very difficult to find those who would agree with the court qualification of the joint criminal enterprise. Do you really believe that President Tuđman was running a criminal gang and the generals were part of it?
I think it's very important for the people of Croatia to understand that there are two different issues here. Operation Storm was a legitimate act of self-defense in a war that was thrust on Croatia. Croatia was attacked, its territory was occupied. And furthermore, Operation Storm saved, in my opinion, tens of thousands of lives in Bihać, because people forget 15 years later what the context was. The context was an attack from General Mladic and the Bosnian Serbs on one side and the Krajina Serbs on the other side, squeezing Bihać with 160,000 people. And this came just days after the massacre at Srebrenica. So that was a very important context. And that was legitimate. The issue the court dealt with was whether the generals and Tuđman conspired to expel the Serbian population from the Krajina. And the court found that they did. That was the criminal enterprise. Storm was not the criminal enterprise. Saving Bihać was a service to mankind.
Tell us a little bit more about the role of the United States before and after Operation Storm. We all know that your government gave a green light for Operation Storm. We also know that the private American company was training Croatian soldiers at Šapurina camp with the blessing of Washington. Can you disclose anything new?
I'm afraid I can't disclose anything that you don't know because these events have been investigated very intensely. The first point I would make is the United States did not give a green light to Operation Storm. We were very careful. We gave no light at all. And I understand that when we didn't say no, when we didn't give a red light, Tudjman understood that he could go ahead. The second point I would make is that we told him that if he did go ahead, he would, he took the risks, meaning that if things didn't go well militarily, the U.S. wasn't going to come to the rescue. And third, I warned him, and I warned him very strongly, not to harm the civilians. In terms of a more active U.S. role in Operation Storm, I think this is the figment of imagination, and it frankly is insulting to what Croatia accomplished itself. First, on MPRI, this company, their mandate was to train the Croatian army on human rights, to assist in things like budgeting for a military. It did not include training them for a military operation or planning a military operation. I don't think they did that, and I had people looking into this. If they did, they broke U.S. law, they broke the UN sanctions. I don't think that happened.
You mentioned President Tudjman earlier. Let me ask you, can you describe your relationship with President Tudjman, and what was his biggest achievement and what was his biggest mistake?
I think during the war, people said, oh, Milosevic is really the smart one and Tudjman's really not that clever. But I thought that judgment was very wrong. Milosevic, I thought, was very tactical. He would move from here to there, but each time he moved, he would step backward because he had no strategic judgment. Tudjman was a very good strategist. He had his eye on the prize. He knew what he wanted. And also, I thought he was an effective leader. He had a very good foreign policy team, and Granic and Šušak, Šarnić, Žužul, some of the others, and a very good economic team. And, of course, he had a fixed vision on the unity of Croatia and on Croatia's links to the West. He achieved the unity. His human rights violations stopped Croatia from being able to be much of a partner of the West. So if you asked what his greatest flaws were, well, he had an authoritarian personality. He was a figure from the 19th century with his nationalist ideas of an ethnically homogeneous Croatia. He had ambitions to divide Bosnia that very few people even in the HDZ shared. And of course, he tolerated, or if the court's judgment is to be credited, he actually was an active participant in crimes against humanity and war crimes.
From the time distance, how do you see modern Croatia today?
I think Croatia's a great success story, and I have to say that it is the pride achievement of my life that I played a part in this. These trials prove that Croatia is a country that where the rule of law prevails. I cannot think of any other case in the world where a country that won the war nonetheless turned its generals over to an international court for trial for crimes that were committed as part of the victory. You know, when you win, the crimes that might take place are forgotten. But that didn't happen in Croatia. Croatia turned over the generals. They turned over the documents. They turned over the recordings of all of Tudjman's recordings. I mean, the most secret documents, and that really is a reflection on Croatia, on the nature of the country, that it respects the rule of law, and so I'm really admiring of what Croatia has accomplished in the last 12 years, certainly since I left. It's what I would have hoped for, but it's much more than I would have thought would have been achieved.